The very first day of 7th grade, I met Linda. And I learned that Linda and I shared the same birthday. So I thought it was destiny that we become best friends. And Linda's family we lived in northern Illinois, and Linda's family had migrated up from Tennessee. And she had come up with her 5 siblings and her mother to escape an abusive father and husband. And they proudly proclaimed to be hillbillies. And I had never met anybody like that. It was just fascinating to me. And I was sort of mesmerized by her. And she must have sensed kind of the vulnerability in me, because she quickly kind of had a lot of power over me. I came from a family of 6. We lived in a mid-century split-level home, and we were a Catholic family, and my parents were both college educated. So what I did with Linda, they rarely knew about. Now, so the first thing Linda did for me is she said, "You really need to start smoking." I'm 12 years old. And I said, okay. So we went out to these woods, and she gave me a cigarette. It was a home run cigarette, which was like this really strange off-brand. And it was awful. It hurt my throat. I coughed. I was nauseous. I thought I was going to pass out. And she's like, "You're doing great. Keep going." So I did. And pretty soon I became addicted. And the next thing she asked, well, our town was divided in half by some railroad tracks. So it was literally on one side of the tracks, Linda lived, where I had never known anybody before, and we lived on the other side of the tracks. So in summer evenings, I would sometimes ride my bike over to the other side of the town because I thought those kids were more exciting. And one night I went there, and Linda held out her hand, and she had a little white pill in it, and she said, "Look what I have." And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "It's White Cross." And I said to myself, like, well, that sounds pretty good. How bad could White Cross be? So she said, "Take it." And once again, you're out there and you're thinking, what an idiot. Like, why would you do that? But I did. So those of you who don't know, White Cross is an amphetamine. And I went home, and unbeknownst to my parents, who were asleep across the hall, I stayed up for 9 hours pacing my room back and forth, smoking out the window, and listening to this little transistor radio, which at the time, that song, "Last Night I Didn't Get to Sleep at All," was on the radio over and over and over again. It was one of the worst nights of my life. But still, I wasn't immune to her bad advice. She got me to shoplift, and I felt so guilty that when she wasn't around, I went back to the store and returned it. She also got me to cut class. And we started to cut class in high school. And every year, I had to go to summer school. And my parents, I was the fourth child, and no one had ever gotten less than a B in a class. And here they had this daughter who was failing things, and they didn't quite understand it, but they insisted I go to summer school. Well, just before our 16th birthday, Linda decided that we would hitchhike out to a farmhouse, and which was kind of like these people were living in this house, and they were kind of pretending it was still the 60s, and it was a commune, and it was really cool. And I said, of course, because whenever Linda told me to do something, okay. So we were standing out with our thumbs out, hitchhiking, and she gave me this little piece of paper, and she put it on my tongue. And I said, "What was that?" And she said, 4-way blotter acid. And I had never done anything like that, and I was like, oh my God. By the time we got safely dropped off at the farmhouse, I was losing it. I was tripping, and I was seeing trails, and things were moving fast, and they were moving slow, and I was starting to get really, really upset. I'd never had an experience like that, and I never did again. But one of the boys who lived in the house thought that he knew how to calm me down. So I went into the house, and he got a shotgun. And he brought the I've never told this story before, by the way. He brought the shotgun out of the house, and he said, come on, what you really need is a little entertainment. So the group of us all went out to this field that was out behind the farmhouse, and there were all these abandoned cars that were kind of rusting away out there. And him and another boy took the shotgun, and they pointed it out towards each of the windows in the car, and they blew it up like, pow, pow, pow. And I'm on acid. And I'm like, oh my God. It was like my whole life was splintering before me. But I also had an epiphany. In that moment, watching those car windows be blown out, I said to myself, I gotta get rid of Linda. I can't do this anymore. And I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna try. So I started summer school the next day, and I did really well. I got back to high school in the fall. I finished, I graduated. Linda quit high school at 16. She had a baby at 17. I left town. I went away to college. I got a degree. I got a graduate degree. I got a second graduate degree. I got married. I raised 2 successful children. But best of all, I stopped listening to bad advice.